Hi everyone, welcome back to a new Roblox story. This time I did write the story about the new Hunty zombie game on Roblox. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the story, if you dare. But before we start to tell the story, we are starting to do shout out in the videos, podcasts. Just ask for it in the comments, and each video we will do 2 shout outs. Shout out to Tom and Gita Meralda for this video. Steve had always loved zombie games. His room was filled with zombie posters, zombie action figures, and even zombie-themed bedsheets. But on this cold October night, he discovered something that would make him never want to see another zombie again. It was 11:47 p.m. when Steve found the new Roblox game called Hunty Zombie. His parents were away for the weekend, visiting his grandparents, so he had the whole house to himself. Perfect timing for an all-night gaming session. The game's thumbnail looked different from other zombie games. Instead of cartoon zombies, these looked almost real. Their eyes seemed to follow Steve's cursor as he hovered over the play button. Something about their faces made his stomach feel weird, but his excitement was stronger than his worry. "This looks awesome," Steve whispered to himself as he clicked play. The loading screen was darker than usual. Instead of happy Roblox music, there was only silence. Then came a low, deep sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Steve turned down his headphones, thinking the volume was too high, but the sound wasn't coming from his headphones at all. When the game finally loaded, Steve found himself in a lobby with grey walls and flickering lights. His character looked more realistic than normal Roblox characters. The details were sharper, the shadows were deeper, and something about it felt too real. In the corner of his screen, he saw another player. "Zombies are real." The username made Steve chuckle nervously. What kind of name was that? A timer appeared, 30 seconds until the game started. Steve looked around the lobby and noticed strange details. There were scratch marks on the walls that looked fresh, dark stains on the floor that looked like... Steve didn't want to think about what they looked like. "Hello. Zombies are real," typed in the chat. "Hi," Steve replied. "Ready to kill some zombies?" There was no response for a moment. Then, "The question is, are you ready for them to kill you?" Steve felt a chill run down his spine. That was a weird thing to say, but maybe this player was just really into the game's atmosphere. The timer hit 0. And the game began. Steve and Zombies Are Real spawned in what looked like an abandoned town. The graphics were incredible, too incredible for a Roblox game. Every broken window, every piece of trash on the street, every shadow looked perfectly real. The moon overhead cast an eerie glow that made everything look silver and ghostly. They each got a baseball bat as their weapon. Steve's character held it just like he would hold a real bat. When he swung it, he could almost feel the weight in his own hands. "First wave incoming," appeared on the screen. That's when Steve heard it. A low moaning sound, like someone in terrible pain. But this sound wasn't coming from his computer speakers. It was coming from downstairs in his house. Steve paused the game, or tried to. The pause button didn't work. He pressed escape, but nothing happened. The game kept running. On screen, zombies began shuffling into view. But these weren't normal Roblox zombies. They moved too smoothly, too naturally. Their clothes were torn and dirty in ways that looked real. When they opened their mouths, Steve could see individual teeth. Some missing, some broken. The moaning sound from downstairs got louder. "Did you hear that too?" "Zombies are real," typed in chat. Steve's hands froze over the keyboard. How could another player hear sounds from his house? "I heard nothing," Steve typed back, but his fingers were shaking. On screen, the zombies were getting closer. Steve made his character swing the bat at the first zombie. When it connected, there was a wet, horrible sound that seemed too real for a game. The zombie fell, and dark liquid spread across the ground. The moaning from downstairs was getting louder and more urgent. Are you sure you didn't hear anything? Zombies Are Real typed again. What do you mean? Steve replied, his heart starting to beat faster. For a full minute, there was no response. Steve kept playing, smashing zombies with his bat, but each hit made him feel sicker. The zombies made sounds when they got hurt, human sounds like real people crying out in pain. Then Zombies Are Real typed, "Read my username." Steve stared at the screen. Zombies are real. Zombies are real. The moaning from downstairs suddenly sounded much, much scarier. Steve stood up quickly, his chair rolling backward. He tried clicking the X button to close the game, but it wouldn't close. He tried pressing Alt plus F4, but nothing happened. The game was stuck on his screen. On screen, more zombies were coming. Wave 2 had started, and these zombies looked different. They wore clothes that looked familiar. A red shirt like his dad wore to work. A blue dress like his mum wore to church. A yellow backpack like his little sister carried to school. But his family was at his grandparents' house. They were safe, weren't they? Steve grabbed his phone and called his mum. It went straight to voicemail. He tried his dad. Voicemail. He tried his sister. Voicemail. The moaning from downstairs stopped suddenly. The house became completely quiet, except for the sounds coming from the game. In the game, Zombies Are Real's character walked up to Steve's character. Instead of helping fight zombies, Zombies Are Real just stood there, staring at Steve's character with empty black eyes. "Go check downstairs," Zombies Are Real typed. "No way," Steve typed back. But his hands were shaking so hard he could barely hit the keys. "You have to. It's part of the game now." "What game? This is just Roblox." "Is it?" Steve looked at his screen more carefully. This wasn't the Roblox website anymore. The address bar showed something else entirely. www.huntyzombiereal.com. Play or die. His blood went cold. When had the website changed? How had he not noticed? A new message appeared on screen, not from Zombies Are Real, but from the game itself. "Objective: go to the first floor of your house. Find the source of the sounds." "This isn't real," Steve whispered to himself. "This can't be real." But as he said it, he heard a new sound from downstairs. Footsteps. Slow, dragging footsteps, like someone was walking but having trouble lifting their feet. Steve's bedroom door was closed, but he heard the footsteps in the hallway outside his room. They were coming upstairs. On screen, Zombies Are Real typed, "They're in your house now, Steve." Steve's real name. How did this player know his real name? The footsteps stopped right outside Steve's door. He could see the shadow of feet underneath the door crack. 2 feet, standing perfectly still. Steve didn't dare move. He didn't dare breathe. On screen, a new zombie appeared in the game. This zombie was wearing a hoodie exactly like the one Steve was wearing right now. The zombie turned its head and looked directly at the camera, directly at Steve. The zombie's face was Steve's face, but wrong. Pale and grey, with dark circles around the eyes. Its mouth hung open, and Steve could see his own teeth, but they were covered in dark stains. "This is what you'll look like soon," Zombies Are Real typed. The footsteps outside Steve's door began moving again, but they weren't going away. They were pacing back and forth, like someone waiting for him to come out. Steve tried calling his parents again. Still voicemail. But this time, his mum's voicemail message sounded different. The words were the same, but her voice sounded flat, empty, like she was reading from a script while half asleep. In the game, Wave 3 was starting. This time, the zombies looked exactly like people Steve knew. His best friend Jake, his teacher Mrs. Peterson, his neighbour Mr. Williams. But they were all wrong, all pale and grey and moving in that horrible, unnatural way. "Steve," came a voice from outside his door. It sounded like his mum, but not quite right, like someone doing a bad impression of his mum. "Steve, why don't you come downstairs? We want to show you something." Steve's hands clenched into fists. His mum wasn't here. His mum was at his grandparents' house. This wasn't his mum. "We're all here, Steve," came another voice. His dad's voice, but wrong like his mom's. "Come play with us." "We want to play your game," said a third voice, his little sister, Emma. But she sounded older somehow, sadder. On screen, "Zombies are real," typed. "Your family came home early. They wanted to surprise you." "They're not my family," Steve typed back. "Look out your window." Steve didn't want to, but something made him turn toward his bedroom window. He pulled the curtain aside just a tiny bit and looked down at the driveway. His parents' car was there. The blue sedan with the dent in the back bumper from when his dad backed into a pole last month. The family stickers on the rear window showing a mom, dad, boy, and girl. But something was wrong with the car. The headlights were still on, even though it was parked. And they weren't the normal white headlights. They were dim and yellow, like sick eyes staring at the house. The voices outside his door got louder. "Steve, we just want to hug you." "Steve, we missed you so much." "Steve, why are you hiding from us?" But under their words, Steve could hear something else. That moaning sound again, like they were in pain, like they were trying to speak but couldn't quite remember how. In the game, "Zombies Are Real" walked his character over to Steve's zombie character. Steve watched in horror as Zombies Are Real pulled out a different weapon. Not a baseball bat, but something that looked like a syringe filled with green liquid. "This will make it stop hurting," Zombies Are Real typed. "Once you become one of them, you won't be scared anymore." "I don't want to become one of them." "You don't have a choice. The game has already started in your house. Look at your arms." Steve looked down at his real arms. They looked normal. But then he noticed something that made his stomach drop. His skin looked paler than usual. And was it his imagination? Or did his veins look darker, more visible? "It's not real," Steve whispered. "It's just the light from my computer screen." But as he watched, the veins in his arms seemed to pulse with a dark colour that definitely wasn't normal. The doorknob to his bedroom started turning. Steve jumped up and grabbed a chair, wedging it under the doorknob. Just in time, something on the other side of the door pushed against it, but the chair held. "Steve?" came his mum's voice, but she sounded confused now. "Steve? Why won't the door open?" "Steve, let us in," said his dad's voice. "We just want to play your game with you." On his computer screen, a new message appeared. "Objective updated. Barricade your room. Survive until sunrise." Steve looked at his clock. It was only 12:23 a.m. Sunrise was still hours away. He pushed his dresser in front of the door, then his desk. The voices outside got more frustrated. "Steve, this isn't fair," said the voice that sounded like his sister. "We came all this way to see you." "Let us in, Steve," said his mum's voice. But now it had an edge to it, an anger that didn't sound like his mum at all. "Let us in, Steve," said his dad's voice, much louder and angrier. The pushing against the door got stronger. Steve could hear the wood creaking. He turned back to his computer. "Zombies Are Real" was typing. "You can't hide forever. They'll get in eventually." What do they want? To make you like them? To bring you into the game? What game? What is this really? For a moment, Zombies Are Real didn't respond. Then, 3 years ago, I was like you. I found this game. I thought it was just a game. Now I live in here, in the computer, and I help find new players. Steve's blood turned to ice. You're not real. I'm real, but I'm not alive. Not anymore. The banging on Steve's door got louder. Bang, bang, bang. "Steve, we're getting impatient," said the voice of his mom. But now she sounded completely different, cold and hungry. Through the gap under his door, Steve could see more than 2 pairs of feet now. There had to be 4 or 5 people out there. But his family was only 3 people. "Who else is out there?" Steve typed to Zombies Are Real. "Your neighbours came to play too. And their neighbours. And their neighbours." Once it starts in one house, it spreads to the whole street, then the whole neighborhood. Then, Steve didn't want to know what came after then. On screen, the game was still running. Wave 4 was starting, and this time there were dozens of zombies. They filled the streets of the game town, moaning and reaching for Steve's character with grey, dead fingers. But the worst part was that Steve recognized all of them now. Everyone from his street, Mrs. Johnson from 3 houses down, the teenage boy who delivered newspapers, the family with the golden retriever, all zombies now, all pale and grey and wrong. This is what your street looks like right now, Zombies Are Real typed. Look out your window again. Steve didn't want to, but he had to know. He crept to the window and looked outside. The street was full of people. They were all standing perfectly still, facing his house. In the dim light from the streetlights, Steve could see that their faces were all wrong, pale and empty, just like in the game. But the worst part was the children. There were kids his age, kids younger than him, even babies in their parents' arms, all with that same empty, hungry look. And they were all staring at his bedroom window. When they saw Steve looking down, they all smiled at the same time. Dozens of wrong smiles with too many teeth. Steve jumped back from the window, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. The banging on his door got even louder. "Steve, everyone wants to meet you," called his dad's voice. "The whole neighborhood is here." "We're having a party, Steve," said his mom's voice. "Don't you want to come to the party?" "It's a game party," said his sister's voice, but she giggled in a way that made Steve's skin crawl. "Everyone gets to play forever and ever." On his computer screen, a new message appeared. Objective updated. Survive until sunrise. Do not let them in. Do not go outside. Do not trust anything they say. "How do I survive?" Steve typed to Zombies Are Real. "You don't," came the reply. "No one has yet, but you can try. Every minute you survive is a minute you stay human. There has to be a way to win. The only way to win is not to play. But you already played. You already opened the door." Steve realized Zombies Are Real was right. The moment he had clicked on Hunty Zombie, he had let something into his house, into his life, into his world. The banging on the door suddenly stopped. Everything went quiet. Steve held his breath, listening. Maybe they had given up. Maybe they had gone away. Then he heard a new sound, scratching, like fingernails on wood, but not from the door, from inside the walls. The scratching got louder and seemed to move, from the left wall to the ceiling to the right wall, like something was crawling through the walls around his room. On screen, Zombies Are Real typed, "They found another way in." The scratching stopped. Steve waited, not daring to move. Then a piece of his ceiling fell down, hitting the floor with a soft thud. Steve looked up and saw a hole in his ceiling. And in the hole, a pale face looking down at him, with black, empty eyes. "Found you," said the face in his dad's voice. More pieces of ceiling fell. The hole got bigger. Steve could see hands reaching through, trying to make the hole larger. Steve ran to the other side of his room, as far from the ceiling as possible. But then he heard scratching from the walls there too. On his computer, Zombies Are Real was typing rapidly. "They're coming through the walls. This is how it always ends. You can't escape them. There has to be something I can do. There is one thing, but you won't like it." "What?" "Join them willingly. It hurts less that way." "No way. Then fight. Use whatever you can find as a weapon. But remember, they used to be people. They used to be your family." Steve looked around his room for something to defend himself with. He grabbed his baseball bat, a real one, not like in the game. It felt heavy and solid in his hands. More ceiling fell down. Steve could see his dad's face clearly now, but not his dad. This thing had his dad's face, but wrong. The skin was grey, the eyes were black, and when it smiled, there were too many teeth. Come here, son, it said in his dad's voice. Let me give you a hug. You're not my dad, Steve yelled. Of course I am, it said, sounding hurt. Don't you recognize your own father? More hands reached through the hole. His mom's hands, but with long, sharp fingernails that scraped against the wood. Steve, why are you being so difficult? Came his mom's voice from the ceiling. We just want you to join our game. The hole was almost big enough for them to climb through. Steve backed against his bedroom door, clutching his baseball bat. Behind him, he could hear more voices in the hallway. Steve, we're still here too, called more voices. His neighbors, his friends, people he'd known his whole life. He was surrounded. On his computer screen, which was still somehow running, Zombies Are Real typed, "This is your last chance to choose. Join them or fight them. If I fight, can I win? No, but you can choose how your story ends." Steve looked at the ceiling. The thing that looked like his dad was starting to climb through the hole. Behind it, he could see the thing that looked like his mom. Steve raised his baseball bat. "I choose to fight," he said out loud. The moment he said it, everything happened at once. The ceiling collapsed completely. The door burst open behind him. The window shattered inward. They came from everywhere at once. The things that looked like his family, the things that looked like his neighbors, the things that looked like his friends. But as they reached for him with their grey, dead hands, Steve noticed something. They moved just like the zombies in the game, and he had gotten very good at fighting zombies in the game. Steve swung his bat at the first one, the thing that looked like his dad. It connected with a wet sound, and the thing fell backward. But instead of the dark liquid from the game, this thing bled something that looked like thick, black oil. That actually hurt them, Steve said, surprised. He swung again, hitting the thing that looked like his mom. It made a horrible shrieking sound and stumbled away from him. On his computer, Zombies Are Real was typing frantically, "This isn't supposed to happen. You're not supposed to be able to fight them." Why not? Because no one ever has before. Everyone else was too scared, or they gave up too easily. Steve kept swinging his bat. Each hit sent one of the creatures stumbling backward. They were strong, but they were also clumsy, just like the zombies in the game. "Steve, stop hurting us," said the thing that looked like his sister, but its voice was getting weaker. "You're not my sister," Steve said, hitting it with his bat. "My sister is safe at my grandparents' house." As he said it, he realized something. These things didn't just look like his family. They were trying to make him think they were his family, but they weren't. They were something else entirely. "What are you really?" Steve yelled, swinging his bat at all of them. The creatures looked at each other with their empty black eyes. Then, at the same time, they began to change. Their faces shifted and melted. Their bodies grew taller and thinner. Their fingers stretched into long, sharp claws. What stood in Steve's room now didn't look human at all. They were tall, grey creatures with no faces except for large black holes where their eyes should be. "We are the Hunty," they said in unison, their voices like whispers from a graveyard. "We hunt for players. We hunt for lives to take into our game." "Well, you can't have mine," Steve said, raising his bat again. But now that they weren't pretending to be human, the creatures moved differently, faster, more dangerous. One of them lunged at Steve with its claws extended. Steve barely dodged in time, swinging his bat up to block the attack. On his computer, Zombies Are Real was typing, "Steve, you have to get to the computer. That's the portal they used to get into your house." Steve looked at his computer screen. The game was still running, but now he could see something he hadn't noticed before. In the background of the game, behind all the zombies, There was a swirling portal of green light. "I have to get to my computer," Steve said, fighting his way across the room. The creatures tried to stop him, slashing with their claws and making horrible shrieking sounds, but Steve kept swinging his bat, clearing a path. When he reached his computer, "Zombies are real" typed. "You have to close the portal, but to do that, you have to go into the game." "Go into the game? How?" "Put your hand on the screen." Steve looked at the computer screen. The portal was getting bigger and more creatures were climbing out of it, not into his room, but into his house, then into his neighborhood, then into his town. "If I go into the game, what happens to me?" "I don't know. No one has ever tried it." Steve could hear more sounds from outside his house. Car alarms going off, people screaming in the distance. The creatures were spreading, just like zombies. Are real had said they would. If Steve didn't stop this now, it would spread to the whole city, maybe the whole world. "I have to try," Steve said. He dodged another swipe from one of the creatures and pressed his hand against his computer screen. The screen felt warm, then hot, then like it was pulling at his hand. Steve felt a strange tugging sensation, like he was being stretched. The room around him began to fade. The last thing he saw was zombies, are real typing. "Good luck, Steve. Maybe you can do what I couldn't." Then everything went dark. When Steve opened his eyes, he was standing in the game. But it wasn't like controlling a character anymore. This was real. He could feel the cold air on his skin, smell the musty scent of the abandoned town, hear every footstep echo off the empty buildings. He still had his baseball bat, and it felt real and solid in his hands. The town was full of zombies, but they weren't moving. They were all standing perfectly still, like they were waiting for something. Steve walked through the streets, looking for the portal. He found it in the center of town, a massive swirling circle of green light, bigger than a house. Standing in front of the portal was a figure Steve recognized. Zombies are real. But this wasn't a Roblox character. This was a real person. A boy about Steve's age, with sad eyes and pale skin. "You actually came," Zombies Are Real said. His real voice was quiet and tired. "I didn't think you'd do it." "What's your real name?" Steve asked. Jake Morrison. I've been trapped in here for 3 years." "How do we close the portal?" Jake pointed to a control panel next to the portal. "See that red button? Someone has to press it. But whoever presses it gets trapped in the game forever. That's why I could never do it. I was too scared." Steve looked at the button. It was so simple. Just one red button that would save his family, his neighbors, his whole town. "If I press it, what happens to you?" "I don't know. Maybe I get to leave. Maybe I get trapped deeper, but it doesn't matter. What matters is stopping this." Steve walked toward the button. As he did, all the zombies in the town started moving. They began walking towards Steve, reaching for him with their pale hands. "They'll try to stop you," Jake called out. "But you can fight them. You're stronger here than they are, because you chose to come here." Steve swung his bat at the first zombie that reached him. It disappeared in a puff of smoke. He swung again and again, clearing a path to the control panel. Behind him, he could hear Jake fighting zombies too, trying to help clear the way. Steve reached the control panel. The red button was right in front of him, glowing like an angry eye. "Steve," Jake called out, "before you press it, you should know something." "What?" "The game. It's not random. It finds people who are brave enough to fight, people who won't give up, people who will sacrifice themselves to save others. It's been looking for someone like you." Steve's hand hovered over the button. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe this was always supposed to happen. Maybe you were supposed to find the game. Maybe you're supposed to be the one to end it." More zombies were coming from all directions. Steve could see hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all walking toward him with empty, hungry eyes. "I have to press it now," Steve said. "Wait," Jake called. "There might be another way." "What way?" "What if we both press it at the same time?" What if it takes both of us to close the portal? Steve looked at Jake. The boy had been trapped in this nightmare for 3 years, fighting alone, trying to find a way out. Let's try it, Steve said. Jake ran over to the control panel. There was a second button on the other side, also glowing red. On 3, Jake said. 1, 2, 3. They pressed the buttons at the same time. The portal began to shrink immediately. The green light got brighter and brighter until Steve had to close his eyes. He could hear the zombies making frustrated moaning sounds as they were pulled back into the portal. The light got so bright it hurt, even with his eyes closed. Then, suddenly, everything was quiet. Steve opened his eyes. He was back in his bedroom, sitting at his computer. The screen was black. The hole in his ceiling was gone. His furniture was back where it belonged. He looked at his clock. 11:47 p.m. The same time he had started playing the game. Had it all been a dream? Steve checked his arms. They looked normal. No dark veins, no pale skin. He felt fine. He looked out his window. The street was empty and normal. No crowds of zombie neighbors. No cars with glowing eyes. Then he heard voices downstairs. Normal voices, laughing and talking. Steve, came his mum's voice, his real mum's voice, warm and happy. We decided to come home early. We wanted to surprise you. Steve, called his sister. Come see what Grandma sent for you. Steve smiled. His real family was home, and they sounded perfectly normal. But as he stood up to go downstairs, he noticed something on his computer screen. A message had appeared. Thanks for playing Hunty Zombie. Game over. Portal closed. Score, you win. Jake. Below that, another message appeared. P.S. Check your computer's downloads folder. Steve checked his downloads folder. There was a new file there. Zombie Defense XE. When he opened it, he found a simple program with instructions. This program will detect if the Hunty Zombie game ever appears on your computer again. If it does, run this program immediately. It will close the portal before any creatures can escape. You're the guardian now, Steve. Keep the world safe. Jake. Steve smiled and saved the program to his desktop. Then he headed downstairs to see his family. As he walked down the stairs, he could hear his mum making hot chocolate in the kitchen, his dad talking about the funny thing that happened at Grandma's house, and his sister playing with a new toy. Normal, wonderful human sounds. But just before Steve reached the bottom of the stairs, he heard something else. A very quiet sound from his computer upstairs. A single notification sound. Steve paused. Should he go check? After a moment, he decided not to. Whatever it was could wait until tomorrow. Tonight, he just wanted to hug his family and tell them how much he missed them. But as he hugged his mom in the kitchen, she whispered in his ear, "Steve, honey, there's someone here who wants to meet you." Steve's blood went cold. "What do you mean?" His mum smiled, but her eyes looked different, empty. "He's been waiting in the living room. He says his name is Jake, and he has a new game he wants to show you." Steve ran to the living room. Sitting on the couch was a pale boy about his age, holding a laptop computer. The boy looked up and smiled. It was Jake, but something was wrong with his eyes. They were completely black. "Hi, Steve," Jake said in a voice that sounded far away. "Thanks for letting me out of the computer. Now I can share the game with everyone in person." On Jake's laptop screen, Steve could see a familiar sight, the Hunty Zombie loading screen. But this time, the game's title was different. It read, Hunty Zombie 2, The Real World. "Want to play?" Jake asked, his black eyes reflecting the green light from his computer screen. Behind Steve, he could hear his family walking into the living room. But their footsteps sounded wrong, too slow, too shuffling. Steve turned around. His parents and sister were there. but their faces were pale and grey, and their eyes were black holes, just like the creatures from the game. "We all want to play, Steve," said his mum, in a voice like whispers from a graveyard. "It's a family game now," said his dad, smiling with too many teeth. "Everyone gets to play forever and ever," said his sister, giggling in a way that made Steve's skin crawl. Steve realised what had happened. When he and Jake had pressed the buttons together, they hadn't closed the portal. They had opened it wider. And now Jake was free to bring the game to the real world. "The best part," Jake said, still smiling his wrong smile, "is that now there's no computer to hide in, no safe place to run to. The whole world is the game now." Outside, Steve could hear car alarms going off, people screaming in the distance, the sound of breaking glass and running footsteps. Jake's laptop screen showed a map of Steve's town. Little green dots were appearing all over it, hundreds of them, then thousands. Each dot represented a new player in the game, a new zombie. "You see, Steve," Jake said, standing up from the couch, "when you freed me from the computer, you gave me something I never had before, a body in the real world. And now I can do so much more than just type messages." Jake walked over to the window and looked out at the street. People were running everywhere, trying to escape from things that looked like their friends and family members. "Isn't it beautiful?" Jake asked. "Everyone gets to play now. No one has to be left out." Steve backed toward the front door, but his family, or the things that looked like his family, moved to block his way. "Where are you going, Steve?" asked his mum. "The game is just starting." "Don't you want to play with us?" asked his dad. "We can all be together forever," said his sister. Steve realised he still had one chance. The zombie defense program he had downloaded to his phone, but his phone was upstairs in his room. "I need to get something from my room," Steve said. "No," Jake said, not turning away from the window. "You don't need anything else. You just need to accept that this is your new reality." "What if I don't want to play?" Jake finally turned around. His black eyes seemed to look right through Steve. "Everyone plays eventually, Steve. The game is very patient. It can wait forever for you to say yes. And if I never say yes?" Jake smiled wider, showing teeth that were too sharp and too many. "Then you get to watch everyone else play. You get to see your friends become zombies, your neighbours, your teachers, everyone you care about, one by one, until you're the only human left. And then you'll be so lonely, so scared, so desperate for any kind of company that you'll beg to join the game." Steve looked around the room. His family was still standing there with their empty black eyes and wrong smiles. Through the window, he could see chaos in the street as more and more people were transformed. But he also saw something else. In the distance, there were flashing lights, police cars, fire trucks, ambulances. The real authorities were coming. "You know what, Jake?" Steve said, straightening up. "I don't think you're as powerful as you want me to think you are." Jake's smile faltered slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, if you were really in control, you wouldn't need me to agree to play. You would just make me play." Jake's eyes flashed with anger. "I don't need your permission." "Then why are you asking for it?" For a moment, Jake didn't answer. The things that looked like Steve's family shifted uncomfortably, like they were waiting for Jake to tell them what to do. "Because," Jake said finally, "the game works better when players choose to join. Willing players make better zombies." "Well then," Steve said, "I choose not to play." He made a run for the stairs. The things that looked like his family reached for him, but Steve was faster. He had been playing sports his whole life, and these zombie versions of his family were slower than the real ones. Steve ran up the stairs 3 at a time, Jake's angry shouts echoing behind him. "You can't escape, Steve. The whole world is the game now. There's nowhere to run." Steve burst into his room and grabbed his phone. The zombie defense program was still there. He opened it and pressed the big red button that said, "Emergency portal, close." The program started running. A progress bar appeared, scanning for dimensional portals. 1%, 5%, 12%. Come on, Steve whispered. Come on, come on, come on. He could hear Jake and the fake family members running up the stairs. 25%, 34%, 41%. Jake burst into Steve's room, his face twisted with rage. What are you doing? Finishing what I started, Steve said, holding his phone protectively. You can't stop this. I'm in the real world now. I'm not just code in a computer anymore. Maybe not, Steve said, but you're still connected to the game, and the game still has rules. 56%, 63%, 70%. Jake lunged for Steve's phone, but Steve dodged. Behind Jake, the fake family members were trying to grab Steve too, but the room was small and they kept getting in each other's way. 78%, 85%, 92%. No! Jake screamed. I won't go back. I won't be trapped again. 98%, 99%, 100%. A message appeared on Steve's phone screen. All dimensional portals closed. Zombie entities returning to source dimension. Real world secure. Immediately, Jake and the fake family members began to fade. They became more and more transparent, like ghosts disappearing at sunrise. This isn't over, Steve, Jake said as he faded away. I'll find another way back. There are always players willing to open the door. Then I'll be ready for you, Steve said. Jake and the fake family members disappeared completely. Steve looked out his window. The chaos in the street was ending. People who had been running in panic were stopping and looking around in confusion, like they were waking up from a bad dream. The zombie neighbors were gone. The strange lights were gone. Everything looked normal again. Steve's phone buzzed. A new message from the Zombie Defense Program. Portal closure successful. All zombie entities return to game dimension. Reality restored. Warning. This program has detected 47 other copies of Hunty Zombie currently active worldwide. Guardian Network activated. You are now Guardian number 1. Mission: protect reality from digital entities. Are you ready? Steve looked at the message for a long moment. Then he typed back, ready. Immediately his phone screen filled with information, locations where other copies of Hunty Zombie were active, other kids around the world who were playing the game right now, not knowing the danger they were in. A new message appeared. Guardian number 1, you have a new mission. Guardian number 2 needs assistance in Tokyo, Japan. A new portal has opened. Can you help? Steve looked out his window one more time. The street was peaceful and quiet. His real family would be home from his grandparents' house tomorrow. He had a choice. He could ignore the message, delete the program, and go back to his normal life. Let other kids deal with their own zombie problems, or he could help. Steve thought about Jake, trapped in the computer for 3 years with no one to help him. He thought about all the other kids around the world who might be playing Hunty Zombie right now, thinking it was just a game. He typed back, on my way. His computer screen lit up with a new program, something that looked like a world map covered in green and red dots. The green dots were safe zones. The red dots were active zombie portals. There were a lot of red dots. Steve grabbed his baseball bat and his phone charger. He had a feeling he was going to need both. As he headed for the door, one last message appeared on his phone. Welcome to the Guardian Network, Steve. Your first portal jump will begin in 30 seconds. Remember, in every dimension, in every reality, in every version of the game, there are kids who need help. You're their hero now. Steve smiled. It was scary, but it was also exciting. He wasn't just playing games anymore. He was saving people. The countdown on his phone reached 0. The world around Steve began to shimmer and fade. When the shimmer cleared, he was standing on a busy street in Tokyo. The signs were in Japanese, the cars looked different, and the air smelled like different kinds of food. But the sound was familiar. The low moaning of zombies coming from somewhere nearby. Steve's phone buzzed. Guardian number 2 is trapped in Shibuya District, Building 47, Floor 12. Zombie portal growing rapidly. Time to portal stabilization, 23 minutes. Good luck, Guardian number 1. Steve looked around the busy Tokyo street. Nobody seemed to notice that an American teenager had just materialized out of thin air. They were all too busy running and screaming from something Steve couldn't see yet. But he could hear it. The shuffling footsteps, the hungry moaning, the sound of breaking glass and car alarms. Steve gripped his baseball bat tighter and started running toward the sounds of chaos. He had work to do. As he ran through the streets of Tokyo, dodging panicking crowds and following the zombie sounds, Steve realized something that made him both scared and excited. This wasn't just about one game anymore. This wasn't just about one portal. This was about every copy of Hunty Zombie that had ever been created. Every kid who had ever clicked on that innocent-looking game. Every computer that had ever downloaded it. The game wasn't random. It was spreading on purpose, looking for brave players who could fight back. Players who could become guardians. Steve's phone buzzed with new messages. Guardian number 3 reporting from Sydney, Australia. Portal contained, but need backup. Guardian number 4 in London, England. New zombie variant detected, requesting immediate assistance. Guardian number 5 in Mexico City. Multiple portals opening simultaneously. Help! Steve smiled as he ran. It was the scariest thing that had ever happened to him, but it was also the most important. He wasn't just playing games anymore. He was saving the world. One portal at a time. The end. Or was it? In a quiet house in a small town, a young girl named Emma turned on her computer late at night. Her parents were asleep, and she had the whole night to herself. She was browsing through Roblox games when she found something interesting. A new game called Hunty Zombie 2, The Guardian Edition. The description read, "Help Steve and the Guardians save the world from zombie invasions. Play as a Guardian and protect reality from digital monsters." Emma smiled and clicked play. She had no idea that somewhere in Tokyo, a teenage boy named Steve suddenly felt his phone buzz with an urgent message. Alert! New player detected. Game evolution in progress. Hunty Zombie learning from Guardian tactics. All Guardians return to base immediately. Steve looked at his phone, then at the zombie portal he had just finished closing in downtown Tokyo. This is getting more complicated, he said to himself, but he was smiling too. After all, every good game needs a sequel, and the real game was just beginning.